Hey guys, welcome back to the Perfect Ride series. My name is Mitch and this is the Lectric ONE. Now you've probably seen some of the stuff online about this bike and you're probably wondering, is it for me? That's kind of what we are diving into in today's video. We're going to talk about use case, some of the cool tech here, and really the goal of this video is to see if this bike is going to be a good fit for you. At the Perfect Ride series, we don't necessarily think there is such a thing as the perfect e-bike, but there might just be a perfect e-bike for you. Is the Lectric ONE it? I don't know. I'm just a dude talking to a camera, so let's get into it. The first and most important thing when it comes to purchasing an e-bike or purchasing anything is going to be the price point. So the price point here on the Lectric ONE is $21.99. Now, that might be something that it's a little bit of a shock for you. You've seen Lectric's bikes go anywhere from $7.99 to $12.99, $15.99 maybe, and you're like, why is this one so much more expensive? And the main reason is the fact that we have a Pinion gearbox here, and that is not something you're gonna see on a lot of other e-bikes, and it's not something you're really gonna see at bikes even at that $21.99 price point. What is a Pinion gearbox? Why is it so cool? Well, in order to fully explain that to you, I'm gonna have to jump into the lab and kind of run through some of the technical specs here so you can understand why it is a cool piece of kit. If you already know what a gearbox is, you already have done some research on Pinion, then you can skip right to the use case section. Otherwise, let's figure out why this cool piece of tech is on this bike and why it costs $21.99.
The Pinion Smart Shift Gearbox is an electronic shifting system designed to offer efficient and precise gear changes. Unlike traditional e-bike motors, it serves as a fully enclosed gearbox with 6, 9, or 12 gear positions, and the C1.6i has a 600% gear range. The system enables gear changes within 0.5 seconds and allows shifts while stationary. When you stop riding, the gears automatically reset to an easier to pedal gear. Stock, it resets to third gear, but that can be adjusted in the app. The gearbox is housed in dustproof, waterproof, and shockproof casing, providing protection against harsh weather and terrain. Maintenance is minimal, with a recommended service interval of 6,200 miles. This design reduces downtime and increases ride time. The Smart Shift system improves on earlier Pinion models by allowing shifts under load, though it has some limitations. High torque situations may trigger a pop sound, and shifts may be delayed under extreme conditions. For the environments you'll be riding the Lectric ONE around in, this probably wouldn't come up. The central placement of the Pinion gearbox lowers the bike's center of gravity, which enhances stability. Unlike traditional derailleur systems, the Pinion eliminates the need for a rear derailleur, reducing a chance of mechanical failure. Here, it is also paired with a Gates carbon belt, meaning less overall maintenance. Gates carbon belts can last up to 19,000 miles of ride time, and for the average cyclist, that's about 6 to 7 solid years of riding without having to worry about greasing a chain. This is not something you'll see on many e-bikes, but it might just be the future of drivetrain technology. So basically, the gearbox is sick, it's a great piece of tech, and that's the main reason the Lectric ONE costs $21.99.
Now when it comes to use case, we're going to talk about what this bike would be good for. There's a lot of things it's not good at, which is pretty common with most e-bikes. So what would the One actually be good for? Well, this is hailed as a long-range commuter e-bike. Now, when people start throwing around the word commuter, you could kind of commute to work on anything. What does that actually mean when they say commuter? Well, for us, there's a couple things we look for. A commuter's got to have fenders on it, meaning it can kind of get you to where you need to go in all weather conditions. It's got to have a light, which we do right here, and it's got to have a rear rack, which we also have. So it really checks off those three sort of main components when we talk about a commuter e-bike. It's got the light, it has got the fenders, and it's got the rear rack. When it comes to the long range part of it, it does come with a 14 amp hour battery, and while Lectric does claim this is good for up to 60 miles of range, that's probably a little bit unrealistic for most folks. I think most folks on here are gonna get anywhere between 40 to 45 is probably the typical average on that style of battery. So is it long range? I don't know. If you've got a 10 to 15 mile commute, I think that something like this could make sense. But if you're looking for, a 25 to 30 mile commute, unless you plan on charging it when you get there, this might not exactly be the build for you when it comes to long range. So just a couple things to keep in mind. When it comes to the motor, we do have a 750 watt motor here in the rear. Peaks at about 1,300 watts, which is honestly pretty powerful. And the fact that we have these 20-inch wheels here, it is gonna lend itself to some more mechanical advantage when it comes to torque. So as far as how this bike sits and the power you get out of it, it does feel pretty peppy, right? It does have the mechanical advantage of the 20-inch wheels, like I mentioned. So that does make a lot of sense here. This is not something that's gonna be super powerful. You're not gonna be doing wheelies or anything, but it does have a nice little kick to it, which you'll see when we get to the ride test portion. The next thing to look at is gonna be the weight of this bike. And the main reason is, if you get it to work, you gotta go up any sort of stairs, you gotta maneuver it around into your work environment. Weight might be something you would consider, might be a factor in your purchasing decision. So right now, as the bike sits, it weighs 57 pounds, which when you compare it to a lot of the other bikes, especially the ones that we review on this channel, it is 20, 30 pounds under a lot of those bigger bikes that are maybe a little bit more common for everyday use. So it does kind of fit the bill as far as being a little bit lighter. If you take the battery out, it takes it down to 49 pounds, which is much more manageable. So there's a couple things to consider as far as the weight goes. Now, speaking of weight, what is your weight? What can the bike carry? So the bike can carry 330 pounds, which is honestly a pretty impressive payload for a bike weighing this much. So I think as far as, you know, how much it weighs to the payload capacity here is pretty nice, pretty good value there. So those are just things to consider. If you're over 330 pounds, you might want to be looking at a different product. But if you are, you know, sub 300, then you should be able to fit on here if you're looking for some of those other premium features like the Pinion gearbox and some of the other features here. The next thing to talk about is going to be range. We did touch on that a little bit in the use case section, but just to kind of dive into some of those battery specs here, we have a 48 volt, 14 amp hour, 672 watt hour battery. And again, Lectric does claim that is up to 60 miles. For me, I'm looking really probably more closer to 40 to 50, maybe 45 kind of being the targeted max for maybe the average rider. I think there's probably some people, low level of pedal assist, you could probably eke out about 60 miles on it. But the way most people are gonna be riding this, I don't think that's a super realistic range. Definitely not something, if you got a 30-mile commute, I wouldn't expect to go there, not charge it, and then get all the way back home if you're just sort of the average rider. So things to consider when it comes to that. The battery is UL2271 certified, which if you live in places like California or New York, it's starting to become a really big deal for you guys. So it is UL certified. So nice to know that if you do get caught with this particular bike out there, somebody stops you and it's like, where's your certification? It is certified. So that is nice. I don't know if people are stopping you asking for certification, but if you want to make sure you're on the right side of the legislation here when it comes to the UL certification, you do have that here, which I think is pretty nice. The next thing to chat about is going to be the terrain. Where can you take this bike? Now, there's a couple of reasons why I would say this is a pavement-only e-bike. The main reason I say that is we don't have any suspension here. So no suspension in the fork, no seat post suspension, which technically you could add to the bike, which might make it a little bit more comfortable. But the way it sits now, it's not really designed to go off-road. So if you hit any roots or bumps or big, large cracks in the pavement, kind of depending on where you live and if they keep up the streets where you're at, this wouldn't be something that would be ideal for any sort of off-road environment. The tires we have here are also a little bit more of a street-centric design. So for me, I really see this sticking to the pavement. So another use case thing to consider, like where are you gonna be riding this bike? If it's on the concrete, like we got here in the parking lot, then you're good to go. If you've got a couple of stretches where you really gotta do some decent off-roading, then you might wanna start looking at something different. The next thing to talk about is going to be how do you transport this thing? How much does it weigh? Now we've already touched on the weight just a little bit, 57 pounds as it sits. As far as transport goes, in general, that probably will fit on some of the more beefier regular bike racks. I still would recommend probably going with an e-bike rated bike rack, if you have access to it. But if you don't, and you've got an SUV, what's kind of interesting about this one is it does have a folding stem. So with the folding stem, you can fold this down like so, fold it down here, probably lower the seat, and then this is about 30, 31 inches right here. So this should fit into most SUVs, especially if you lay it down on its side. We don't have gears or derailleur to worry about when we lay it down, which is kind of a nice thing as we're considering sort of just throwing it in the back of an SUV. But even if you wanted to put it sort of straight up and down, 30, 31 inches, measure the hatch back there, and if it'll fit, should be able to just slide it right in, put something against it, and it should be okay. So for transport wise, we do have this option, and I think that is pretty slick. And that way, if you do have an SUV, you don't necessarily have to go with the bike rack. You can fold it down and it should be able to fit into whatever you're riding around in. So if you're watching this video, use case wise, price point, you like the tech that's in here, the next thing to chat about would be how does it feel to actually ride this bike? So for that, I'm gonna send it over to myself for the ride test. All right guys, we are out here for the ride test on the Lectric ONE. One of the first questions I had when it came to the Pinion system here is, does the bike need to be on for it to work? And the answer might surprise you, because like this, we're gonna head to and upshift, it still cruising. So the bike is not on, but we still are able to shift through all 6 gears here. And then when you get to your top, be a little beep noise. I don't know if that's coming through or not, but it'll beep, let you know you're at the top or the bottom. Boom, now we're down to our highest gear. And really, as a bike, it's not too bad just to pedal it around. But this is electric bike review, so let's go ahead and turn it on. Right here, it's going to show us our battery, how many wattage we're pulling, and right now we're not moving, so we're not pulling anything. Our speed, level of pedal assist, and we've got our odometer. We can press the power button over here. Trip, range, voltage, current, and time the bike's been on. So in 0, throttle doesn't work. You know, it's basically, we can do the exact same thing we were doing before, except for now it's going to show us our speed. But we'll put it into pedal assist level 1. Let's go ahead and test the throttle from a standstill here. And our throttle is going to take us to about, oh, it keeps going, 9-ish, cutting off around 9. So the throttle is in sync with our level of pedal assist. So if we go to 2, we're going to pick up, it's going to obviously go past 9, 3, 4, 5. And once you get to 5, you get that full 1300 watts all the way up to 20. And in fact, this thing gets up to 20 so quick that once you hit 20, it almost kind of cuts off a little bit. So there's a lot more in this motor than you would think, since its top speed is only 20 miles an hour. And again, boom, we were up to 20 miles per hour, just like that. So very easy. Once you get it into pedal assist level 5, it is going to be pretty easy to get those top speeds pretty quickly. Now, some people, and I would probably count myself among those, they like when the pedal assist is not in sync with the throttle. Because if you are, you know, you're cruising around at, say, like pedal assist level 1 or 2, you know, we're just kind of cruising around. Something like this, 11, 12 miles an hour, and you see a situation you need to get out of, it'd be nice to be able to hit this and kind of go to, you know, a higher top speed. So we don't have that here on the Lectric ONE. So that might be something that would be worth looking to upgrade or change, or, you know, maybe give us the option in the settings. I think that would be pretty interesting. But the real star of this show is going to be that pinion drive. So go ahead and down. So actually, if you heard it, actually let me demonstrate this a little bit better. So I'm going to shift. So now we're in the highest gear. Not let me go any further. And then I'm going to stop. So this, you know, it's harder to pedal. This is for, you know, top speed basically should be about this gear. But then when we stop, listen for it. Hear that? It's resetting. So now when I go to start, it's not in the heaviest gear. So I can still shift. See? So it actually downshifts you. So when you do come to a stop and you go to start again, you're going to be in that higher gear. It does it automatically every time you stop. Go ahead and demonstrate it again. Stop right over here. Boom. Now we are in a easier to start off gear. And we can keep on rolling. So let's go ahead and put it to our hardest pedal gear. Put it in pedal assist level 5. And it really takes off up to that 20 miles an hour. I mean, it's, you know, the 20-inch wheels have a little bit more of a mechanical advantage when it comes to lower end torque. But the fact that, you know, a bike that is this small gets up and going that fast, it's not something you see every day. And then now we're pedaling, you know, 20 miles an hour, super easy. We're in our highest gear over here. And there you go. Now we're cruising around at 20 miles an hour effortlessly. Now, one of the things that I was a little bit confused by when it came to the system here for our pedal assist is I kind of assumed it would be torque, but it's actually cadence. So we can demonstrate that. We're going, you know, pretty slow, cruising at like 4 miles an hour right here. And as soon as I start to pedal, I'm not putting that much effort into it, but as soon as that cadence kicks on, then I'm still pedaling just real lightly on it. But as long as I keep those pedals moving, it's still gonna shoot me up to 20 miles per hour. So really, because this is a cadence system, you're pretty much picking your top speed with your level of pedal assist. It's a little bit more minute than that, but, you know, just sort of broad strokes here. That's one of the differences between cadence and torque, whereas cadence is, really setting a top speed that pedal assist level goes to. And with torque, it's a percentage of the motor. So even if you're in pedal assist level 5 on some of those torque sensor bikes, you can still go 5-6 miles an hour, and you're still getting some assistance. It's just you're not putting that much into the pedaling. But with a cadence system, all you have to do is be pedaling. Now, what I did notice is that when you do sort of start pedaling, it does kick on the cadence a little bit sooner. So when we were doing that slow test, it took a couple rotations for it to come on. But if you really start pedaling it, so I'm really gonna start pedaling it, it's about a full rotation, as it says right there. I'm gonna go ahead and downshift and see if that changes when that cadence kicks in. Oh yeah, that was almost immediate. Let's see. So the cadence, it clicks on much quicker when you're in those higher gears. I mean, that's a quarter of a turn before I start to get something. So it's really just in those lower gears, so the harder to pedal, slower cadence gears, that it takes that long. And that kind of makes sense to me. You're going at higher speeds. You'd want it to have a little bit more of a smooth roll off, roll on at higher speeds. So that does make sense. And again, just to demonstrate that, we're in pretty low gear here, or high gear. I don't know the right way to say it, guys. It's the harder to pedal gear. And yeah, it's about 2.5, 3 rotations before pedal assist kicks in. But if we downshift and start from here, it's pretty immediate. Actually, one of the kind of smoother cadence, and it takes off pretty quick. So that is something to keep in mind if you are going to come to like a crawl like we were doing, and you're in those lower gears. I don't know if I'm just going to switch up how I'm saying it. If you're in a harder pedal gear, then it is going to take a lot longer for the cadence to kick on, for the motor to actually kick on from, feeling your cadence go around. Because you should be, it makes total sense that they would design it that way. And then again, if we come to a stop, you hear the motor, and then now we're in an easier to pedal gear. So when you do start off, a little bit quicker on the come on. I think it puts us into third, because we still had 2 gears we could go up on that side. Now, one of the things that I really like is the fact that we do have these tactile buttons. These are probably my favorite shifting buttons of all time. It's just, it feels good. They're a really, really solid, like rubber, or at least rubber padded, and just really good tactile, really good click to it. I'm a big tactile guy, so I really enjoyed these levers here. And a couple other things that I already know we're not going to talk about in the review that I would like to touch on right now, just before we say goodbye in the ride test portion. It's two things. The reason I know we need to talk about them is because I haven't talked about them yet, and I already filmed the rest of the review. So the two things I didn't really cover in the review that I'd like to talk about is, first and foremost, we do have a through axle here in the front, which I think is really nice. Again, this is a premium quality bike. It's a premium price tag, especially for Lectric. And so having a through axle here, I think, is a really nice option. It's very sturdy. The way that they do their through axle, I think, is really nice. It's a very similar through axle that we see on like the X-Peak, for example. So big fan of this. The other thing is we also have quick release pedals. So you just pop this out, kind of like a drill bit, and then boom, your pedals pop off. Now at first, I was kind of confused about why you would want to have removing pedals. However, a couple of videos ago, somebody had mentioned that they will take off their pedals when they go into a store and they lock it up, because it makes it a lot harder for somebody to steal their bike, or they'll see it and they're like, oh, it doesn't have pedals on it. So there is that. I don't know if that's 100% the use case for everyone, but it was probably the only one that I've heard so far that kind of makes sense. But another nice thing is when you're assembling it, it's really easy to just pop those things in and not have to, get a 6mm wrench or a 15mm wrench and, do whatever you need to do. So those are the two things I know I didn't talk about. I think those are pretty sweet. And last but not least is the stem here. when you fold it, go ahead and, so we can demonstrate that, turn the bike off real quick. So you push this up, and this thing comes up. So you can actually adjust where this sits, which is cool, but also you can adjust the cant of the handlebars at the same time, which a lot of these adjustable stems you can't do. So for me, I'd probably go up, and that's probably about where I'd have it. So what's interesting about that is if you do have two different riders on here, and you're like, oh, I want to ride it a little bit higher, she wants to ride it a little bit lower, whatever it is, you can do that and adjust the cant of the handlebars all at the same time and not have to carry around a 4mm or a 5mm wrench to then adjust that. So that's actually pretty cool. I think that's a cool thing to do on this particular bike. Same thing with their cargo bike as well, has the same stem, and that one makes a lot of sense too. Dad's gonna ride the kids around, mom's gonna ride the kids around. They're probably a little bit different ride styles, probably a little bit different height. So the fact that you can do that quickly and on the fly, and really anybody can do it, it's not a lot of pressure. I mean, you're just pushing this up, popping this open, and then you're making your adjustment. Boom, you're ready to go. So I think that that is probably one of those things I didn't cover but should have covered, so I'm covering it now. And guys, I think that's gonna do it for our ride test on the One, and let's head back to the review. All right guys, the next thing to look at is going to be the display. So let's go ahead and turn this on and see what this looks like. So we turn it on. We do have a color LCD here. Now the batteries run a little bit low, so normally it'd be a bunch of green bars over here. There's not, because it needs to be charged. But it's gonna show you how many watts you're pulling. We got our speed, our current pedal assist level, which we can adjust right here, the plus and minus button. So 5 levels of pedal assist is our max. Turn it down to 0, turn it off. It's gonna show us our odometer here. If we press this power button, it's gonna cycle between odometer, trip, range, our voltage, current, and the time the bike's been on. So it really does tell you quite a bit of things there as far as the display goes. It's pretty big, probably about, I don't know, what is that? Probably about 3.5, almost 4 inches tall, and maybe about 2.5 inches wide. So it's pretty big. The numbers I think are really, really big, really easy to see. It's fairly bright. Now it is still, you know, nice and sunny out here, but obviously you can tell we can pretty much read everything on the display. So really, all in all, it is it's pretty darn sweet. Turn it off, press and hold this. And actually, I guess if we want to turn this on one more time, to turn on our lights, you press and hold the plus button over here. And we got a little light indicator over here. And then when we brake, that's going to flash in the back, which you can't see because we're focused over here. Press and hold the plus button to turn that off again, and then we can turn the bike off. So really, as far as the display goes, I think it is a good match for this bike here. The next thing to chat about is going to be safety. Now, when it comes to safety, there are some things on the bike that we will mention, and then we'll talk about some of the UL certifications. So on the bike, the first thing, in my opinion, maybe the most important thing when it comes to actually keeping you safe on a bike is the fact that we do have hydraulic brakes here. Lectric hasn't always had hydraulic brakes on their models, but they basically were like, hey, hydraulic brakes are better than mechanical, and they sent hydraulic brakes to pretty much everybody that ever bought a bike, which I thought was pretty cool. A pretty cool move by them. So we do have hydraulic brakes, 180mm rotor, so plenty of stopping power here, especially for, you know, these tires and this type of terrain, the speeds that you're going to be going. I think they do the job really, really well. So hydraulic brakes, definitely something we want to see. We do have locking grips, which if you've seen some of the recent Lectric reviews, most of them are starting to go that route and having locking grips, which I think is an excellent safety thing. That's your main contact with the bike, and you don't want that, you know, flopping around. So I think they hit the nail on the head both there. We do have integrated lights, so integrated light up front, integrated light in the rear. Now, the light in the front, it's not super bright. It's a little bit more of a B scene than 2C kind of light. So getting something that's a little bit brighter, you can mount up here, get you a better throw angle, would be a lot brighter than what comes stock here. But this is a safety thing in that people will be able to see you coming because you do have a light mounted, even though it's mounted a little bit lower than maybe what would be ideal. The other thing is we do have sidewall reflective stripes on these tires here. So like I mentioned, we got the light that goes in the front, we got the rear light going to the rear. So when it comes to somebody being able to see you from the side, when they are coming up to you and they've got their headlights on, these will reflect just these giant circles. They light up like Christmas trees. So that is an excellent safety feature to see here as well. So all in all, just as far as like how the bike sits, I think they really did a really good job on kind of nailing some of those safety concerns that we see on a lot of the lower end e-bikes. So the fact that we are, you know, kind of jumping up in price point here to the $21.99, it is nice that they really hit all those safety features that I would like to see on, you know, on every bike, but especially this price point, I think they really nailed those. When it comes to the UL certification, like I mentioned, the battery is UL 2271 certified, so that's dope. And the whole bike as a unit is UL 2849 certified, meaning that they sent this off to Underwriters Laboratories. They looked at all the components and said, hey, this is safe for the consumers. And also that costs quite a bit of money. Anywhere between 20 to 40 grand is the cost estimate I get from different brands. And so, they spent 20, 40 grand to send one of these units off to have them tested, and it came back as UL approved and safe for consumers. So you do know, like, if you are purchasing this product, it is safe. You don't want to be, one of those news stories or somebody that winds up burning down your apartment complex. So the fact that the battery's UL certified and the bike's UL certified is definitely a huge plus when it comes to the safety of the bike and also, the safety for the consumer. The next thing to chat about is going to be the measurements on this bike. Now, there's lots of measurements we could go over, but this isn't that channel. So let's talk about the 3 most important measurements, in my opinion, which are going to be our width, the height on the folding handlebars, and the standover height. The standover height here is 20 inches, so this is something that'll be pretty easy for you to get on and off of. And the folded handlebars here are 31 inches from the top to the ground, so if you do want to throw this in the back of an SUV, those are some measurements to take. And the width here at the handlebars is 27 inches. The next measurements to talk about are your measurements. And so to see if you're going to be able to fit on this bike, we're going to look at that from the minimum and the maximum saddle height. The minimum saddle height here is 27 inches from the top of the seat to the pedals at the lowest point, and 30 inches from the seat to the ground. The maximum saddle height here is 36 inches from the top of the seat to the pedals at the lowest point, and 39 inches from the top of the seat to the ground. Now, when it comes to extras, we've pretty much talked about them all at this point. We talked about the fact that this does come with fenders, it does come with integrated lights, it does come with hydraulic brakes. It's obviously got the Pinion gear shift here. So as far as extras go, I think they really nailed it. Again, looking at the value to the price point, this is their most expensive bike, and I think they really brought out all the stops when it comes to making sure that we had all those extras to justify the extra value there. The next question is, how can you get one, right? If you watch the video up until this point, obviously this is something that is gonna fit your use case, fit your budget. So you're like, yeah, I could get this bike. I'm pretty stoked on it. How do you get your hands on one? Well, really the only way you can do it, with the few exception of a couple of Lectric dealers across the country, is you would buy this direct from Lectric. So you go to lectricebikes.com and you can order this thing to your house. Assembly wise, there was basically nothing, if I remember correctly. This is probably like 99% assembled. I think I put on the pedals and maybe put in the seat post, which is pretty simple. So really super simple to put this thing together if you do ship it to your house. So you can buy it from them. That's kind of the only way to get a hold of it, unless you're one of those guys that lives near somebody who carries them. Most people don't. Most bike shops don't, but most people are gonna be ordering this online anyway. The last thing to chat about is gonna be after-sales service and warranty here. So all electric bikes come with a 1-year warranty, and from what I've seen online, they really do a good job of kind of stretching that. So I've seen people who get warranty stuff done, 1.5 years from purchasing their bike, and they talk about it like in the owners groups and stuff. So I think they take that 1-year warranty and they really take care of their customers, which I think is pretty cool. They have a lot of customer support staff that is in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been to the facility and got to tour that and kind of seen how many people they actually have to handle that. And one of the things that I really like about the way that they do their customer service is they offer phone support, they offer email support, which most companies do, but they also have video chat support, which I think is the best thing you can do for a product that is complicated, right? An e-bike product, and that goes for any of them, they are complicated. There's lots of things, lots of plugs, lots of pieces that all have to function correctly for the bike to work, and so being able to do that on a video chat makes a lot of sense. Here at Power and E-Bikes, I do that quite a bit. If somebody is an hour and a half away, 2 hours away, doesn't really make sense to have them come in if it is a simple fix, and I'll be like, hey, you got an iPhone? Let's chat, and I can walk them through something. I would say like 90% of the time it is a pretty simple thing that we're able to diagnose and have them fix over the phone versus them driving 2 hours to bring their bike in. So I really like that. I think it's a very efficient use of their time, because it does take a lot less time to be like, show me this thing, and you can visually inspect it and go, oh, it could be XYZ, versus send me a picture, send me a video if you're doing it via email. So the fact that they do offer that, I think is pretty dope. And guys, I think that's gonna do it for our Perfect Ride series review of the Lectric ONE. If you wanna know more about them, I'll have a link down to Lectric's website below. And if you got any questions for me, Let me know down in the comments. I love talking to you guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.